Are we ready to go?
Yes.
Okay. Call the work session to order. Madam Clerk, can I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Christine Adamczak,
Here.
Councilmember Linda Hammer, Councilmember Gerald Kaminsky,
Present.
Councilmember Brian Nowak,
Present.
Councilmember Brian Pilarski is being admitted. He went out and back in. Hold on. Hi, Brian. We are doing roll call.
Present.
Councilmember Brian Pilarski,
Present.
Hey, Kim, it's Jesse. My number is 3433. That's my call-in.
I think we lost Kim.
I apologize. My speaker cut out there. So we have Councilmember Richard Rusiniak
Here.
and Supervisor Benchkowski.
Here. Okay, let's get moving. First item of discussion is the Royal Car Wash. I have Rick Coburn here today to give us an update because we did have a public hearing on July 14th. And I know he has communicated with the entire board, giving us updates on some of the questions that were posed back then. So the floor is yours, Rick Coburn.
All right, thanks, Diane. Just to lead in, and everybody did go through the public hearing, and I did talk to a few of the council members about some of their concerns. Just to make things easy and specific to let the applicant, and I think Corey Arbach is on the line to address anything specific from the board that I could not answer through my conversation. And I also have Brian Kulpa that is familiar with somewhat of the project and the proceedings about the rezoning, if there's any questions that he might assist in also with that matter. But Corey, if I will let you answer any questions the council member has to address at this point. But I can just say the biggest thing and concern I thought that was addressed to myself was the number of counts for the vehicles. There was a discrepancy about how many are coming off and on the site based on the analysis from the traffic engineer, the EIT standards. So Corey, I'll let you address that.
Sure. Thank you, Rick, and good evening to the members of the board. So the engineers for this project, Passera Associates, did prepare a traffic analysis that we submitted with the application documents. And what they did was they looked at the ITE trip generation manual, which is the industry standard for determining the number of anticipated uses that will be modeled for a proposed use. And they compared those to what could be expected at the peak time in the peak hour. And that's the way that traffic analysis is done. They figure out how many vehicle trips they anticipate at the peak hour and then do an analysis from the AM and the PM peak. The total trip generation for this at the peak hour, so the time where it's anticipated to be the busiest, was 29 vehicle trips at peak. And they compared that to the peak hour for the previous use, the Holiday Showcase restaurant, which was 74 vehicle trips at peak. So we're substantially less than the prior use. The New York State DOT and the DEC generally use as a rule of thumb 100 additional vehicle trips at peak hour to determine whether a traffic impact study is required. So when answering the questions in the environmental assessment form about whether there will be a substantial increase in traffic from, for example, a commercial use like we're proposing, unless there is anticipated to be an additional 100 trips at peak, it's not considered to be a substantial increase in traffic. So the no traffic impact study was done because we don't even come close to the threshold at 29 vehicle trips per hour. And there's always a little bit of fear of the unknown. So that's why we compared it to the prior use where the impacts, had been measured previously. And again, we have 45 less vehicle trips at peak hour than would have been anticipated for the Holiday Showcase restaurant. So there still will be some permitting that's done through DOT, and the applicant has substantial experience working with DOT. Their other Erie County facilities are on, in West Seneca, are on Transit in Clinton, which is the corner of two state roads. In Lancaster, they are also on Transit near the Depew interchange, and in Tonawanda, they are on Sheridan Drive. So all of their facilities are on state roads. They're very intimately familiar with the regulations from DOT. And in working with DOT on those other projects, we were able to satisfy their concerns by actually using drone footage of the existing Royal Car Wash facilities in Monroe County that are similarly situated, and showing them the vehicle flow and the number of vehicles in real time with literally hundreds of hours of drone footage. So we've been able to satisfy all of DOT's concerns with our substantial stacking and the site design, and don't anticipate that there will be any issues related to traffic coming off of the site.
So do any council members want to have any questions about the traffic while we have Corey here?
Yeah,
Councilman
Diane,
Blackhurst here. I do.
Jerry Kaminsky? Or wait, I thought I heard Jerry first.
Go ahead.
Let me have, go ahead, Jerry.
yeah, I'll get it after Brian.
Okay, Brian Pilarski?
Yeah, so we're talking 29 cars at peak, and I just want to clear it up because during the public hearing, Mr. Daniele, Anthony, referred to 120 cars going through an hour at peak. So at about the 35-minute, 19-second mark. Can you clarify what was meant by that then?
Anthony, you're muted.
Or I can take it as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to start, and then Dave, you can, or Anthony, but I think what they indicated at the public hearing was that was the most number of vehicles that would ever be anticipated at its maximum. The ITE trip generation manual provides you with what's anticipated at the peak hour. They were just explaining to you that the maximum that could move through there that would be possible was that number that they indicated at the public hearing. Not that that's what actually would be anticipated at peak.
Yeah, and if I could chime in, this is Anthony, because I'm the one who said it. I think the question referred to what's the most number of cars or during a peak time of business, which in our scenario, it happens at different times of the day, at different days of the week. A lot of it's weather dependent. It doesn't typically happen at 5 o'clock between that rush hour. And when we're dealing with traffic studies and ITE, they're focusing on when is the main road, Union, the busiest, which is, the morning drive to work and the evening drive home. Our typical peak times don't necessarily happen during those times. Most of the time it's on a Saturday. I mean, I think all of you are familiar with car washes and know when when you see the most traffic. So there is a difference between the ITE and, I guess, Dave Cox, you're my engineer, so if I'm misspeaking, go ahead.
Yeah, and one point of clarification as well. When the ITE talks about those 100 trips, it's talking about generating 100 trips of traffic. A car wash, similar to a gas station, is a lot of pass-by traffic. It's people already out on the road. It's around 80% pass-by traffic. So, the car wash is actually only generating 20% of that traffic. The rest is pass-by traffic. So it's not actually generating that much traffic. And the 100 trips is based on generation. not cars that are already on Union, pulling in to go to car washing, going back out onto the road, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so you're talking 20 new cars out of the 100 compared to the 80 that were already duplicated going by there no matter what anyways.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, this is Rick Rushnak. I went out today.
Councilmember Kaminsky, did you have a question?
No, Brian covered what I was gonna ask, Diane.
Anybody else?
Yes, Rick Rushnak.
Yes, right.
Okay, I went out today. I did a basic car count timing on the one on Clinton and Transit. Your averaged wash time was 3 minutes. So I see where they come up with their time of 30 cars, 29 cars per hour at 3 minutes apiece. You do the math, we're close. Wasn't packed. The entrances was same amount of entrances, one on Transit, one on Clinton. Everything ran smooth. I was there from 11 to 12 o'clock, a little after 12:15. And it was, 2:55 to 3:05 it took to get through the car wash. So, I mean, you crank it up. I imagine car washes don't get any better. The speed you're running at now, you must get a good wash. So that's probably why you're at that number. So I did look and watch. Look good. Thanks.
Councilman Pilarski again here. Questions. Have you guys since talked to the neighbors at DLC? What was it, Jeffrey Levy, I believe? Because at the moment when we had the public hearing, they found out 2 days before. So I'm just wondering if you guys have come in contact because Corey said that you guys would reach out and have communication with them in regards to the site plan approval.
Yeah, this is Anthony Daniele. I actually emailed both of the gentlemen that were in the meeting and left messages at their office and heard back from neither of the two through my broker and actually through the existing property owner. I was able to get the phone number of the actual owner of the property who's located down in New York. I did call him. I spoke to him for about 3 or 4 minutes. He seemed familiar with the project, didn't really have an opinion one way or the other, and kind of referred me back to the two guys that were at the meeting. So I can't really say I got far, but I did reach out and haven't heard back one way or the other from them.
When was that? How long ago?
That was about 4 or 5 days within 4 or 5 days of our last meeting.
Great, thank you.
Did you have more questions, Councilmember Pilarski?
Yes, one last one. So Corey said during the public hearing that it was a unanimous decision with the planning board, and that was not true. Was that mistaken or like?
Yeah, that must have been mistaken. If I said that was a mistake. I think what I potentially meant was that we had a unanimous decision from the EAC, I believe, on the recommendation for the negative declaration. And if I misspoke, I apologize.
No, thank you. I mean, for me, just with not talking to the neighbors and whether you misspoke or not, whatnot, some flags went off to me, with this project. So I'm a little concerned about it. That's why I'm asking all these questions.
No, they're great questions.
Jerry Kaminsky, Corey, relative to the question Brian was asking, how many of the neighbors within 300 feet of your property have been notified about it or talked to?
Any notification, I think, occurs at the town level. If there's notification that's sent out, I think it's by the town. It's not by us.
No, I totally understand it, but have you talked to the people across the street or anybody else close by?
I have not had any communication, no, other than the outreach that we had with DLC. I have not reached out to anybody else about the project.
And I mean, for the record, DLC does own probably, I don't know how many acres, I don't want to misspeak, but it's a pretty big plaza and it's all the same owner. So there really aren't, certainly no residential neighbors. And from a business neighbor standpoint, pretty much our neighbor is DLC Properties. They own everything around it.
Where are you folks at as far as applying for the zoning goes? As far as my understanding at this point in time, it has not been applied for,
Apply for what? I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
the rezoning.
Yeah, so the rezoning and the site plan approval applications were both submitted and have been reviewed by the EAC with their recommendation for a negative deck. And then the site plan was before the planning board for a recommendation. So we submitted one application that included the rezoning and the site plan approval, along with our environmental assessment form and the related supporting documents. So that's actually before the board this evening and was the subject of the public hearing.
Well, that's what I said. I didn't see anything on board about the zoning for tonight.
Yeah, I don't want to speak out of turn or speak for Rick or for Jesse, but I believe that
I can address that, Corey. Yes, there was an error in submitting it. It was in Minitrack. Unfortunately, it didn't get submitted, so it's under the suspension of rules.
So it's on tonight's agenda under the suspension of rules? Because I haven't seen it either.
Correct.
I haven't seen it either, Brian.
It went in
When did that
around
come out, Diane?
about 2:30.
Diane, do you mind if I explain a couple of the reasons what we had going on with the submission?
Yes.
It was in the technicality that our office submitted into council for review. And there was some conversation about the language that Jesse and I kind of conferred with. We discussed it. We tried to get a clarification of the language and the specifics of it. And it didn't get in. We hoped Friday it was, but there was an attachment of the map, which was part of it, which didn't get in
Rick,
till.
Rick,
so
I'm on as well.
Okay.
Rick, it's Jesse as well. So Friday, myself and Tony and the law department were going back and forth to amend the local law number 1. Not so much on my end, but the law department, they wanted to amend just to make sure that resolution was right. So we did submit it back in on Friday with the attached zoning map, which obviously at the end of the day, the clerk's office, they didn't actually submit on Minitrack, which would upload it to, on your end, when it shows up on the resolution for the town board meeting. So Jerry, it was actually, we were working on it last week. It was in. We just needed to make sure that the wording on the law side was correct.
Thanks, Jess.
If that helps, Jerry.
Well, yeah.
It's
seems
not like it was just put in today.
most
It's been worked on all last week.
I myself am not comfortable and ready to vote on this. I'd like to table this one until next meeting. And this is just an example on why we should have work session items on the next agenda, my opinion.
I agree, Brian. I'll be glad to second it.
Well, we're not at the point we're tabling anything yet. We're just in the work
I
session
understand.
discussion items.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is the public hearing and our discussion amongst board members was a month ago. It was in July 14th. It gave plenty of time. There were numerous communications from Rick Coburn. He was making phone calls to all of you. So I don't want you to feel like it was a last minute thing here. You all were privy to all that information and prepared. So I'm just puzzled by why we're at this point where you would want to table it for another 2 weeks when it was a month ago that we talked about this.
I'll tell you why I'm tabling it and not ready for it, because certain council members were asking for a traffic study for a while and didn't get it. We didn't get it until late last week or even yesterday. A lot of flags went off to me because of stuff, whether it was misspoken or not, saying unanimous with the planning board, not telling the neighbor. It took multiple weeks to get a 2-page report on the traffic study or analysis because it wasn't a study because it was under the 100 cars. I'm still wondering if they communicated, and then that was answered for me. But then now today at 2:30, a suspension of rules goes under for the rezoning. So to me, I'm not ready to vote on this, and I'd like to look it over a little more.
Hey, Brian, I could back up everything on that. So the traffic report, I upload everything on Basecamp, which sends out to every single council member and everyone in the town that's actually on Basecamp. The owner of DLC and the vice president, they reached out to me on, it was July 14th, and I got nothing back after July 14th. So they reached out and they touched base with me. And then also I submitted the rezoning resolution on Thursday before the 10 o'clock deadline. So everything on my end or for Royal Car Wash was in and was spoken for.
Yeah, just if I might very quickly, the traffic report was submitted with the application document. So that was submitted with our initial filing. And then to Jesse's point about the 14th, DLC contacted the town on the same day as last month's meeting. So we were advised about DLC's inquiry about 2 hours before the meeting last month. So they only popped up the day of the meeting. And since then, we've made every diligent effort to communicate with them. I don't know if their concerns were satisfied at the meeting and they were no longer, or just not interested in speaking with us, but we did make every diligent effort to do that. As to the other neighbors, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Any document they needed, I mean, I was there. I was more than willing to get them in contact with any council member, but it went as far as a phone conversation and that was it.
So what do we do in the event? I know one of the issues with DLC was that there's an access point and curb cut, part of the plans here, the concept plans. So do you go through with your plans, put this curb cut in, and now DLC's not happy with it and the town is in the middle of this? Like, how does this work?
Yeah, it actually doesn't implicate the town at all. There's a reciprocal easement agreement. So and that's when, at last month's meeting, when they kept referring to the REA, that's what they were talking about. There's a reciprocal easement agreement between the two properties that outlines the rights and obligations of each company in relationship to the common maintenance and access issues. And those are all private issues between the two property owners. Obviously, we will continue to work with them if they determine that access point is an issue. I think that they raised that point to the board prematurely, because when they take a look at it, they're going to find that that's actually a much better place for the access to be than where it currently is. But we'll continue to work with them on that. But it's a private issue of access. We have a right of access under the REA, and it's really just between essentially the attorneys for the parties. But we're confident in our site design that that's going to be the best fit for both properties.
Brian Nowak here. I just wanted to seek clarification from Rick Coburn relative to the zoning code. One of the big issues brought up with the car wash has been the zoning. Section 260-33 of the zoning code talks about the changes of permitted use. And we got an email on August 4th, clarifying what our zoning code says on that. So if Rick can take a moment to speak to some of the zoning concerns about switching to MS and what that means in terms of the future potential uses for this land, if it were to become a car wash now, what can happen to it in the future?
Thanks, Brian. And to clarify from my understanding, and I will explain what my email came out very clearly identifying that when an MS does go out of its approved use, it requires a special permit from the board approval for repurposing any use to go on forward. So it does come before the board and we review it for any kind of repurposing of that principal use, even in the MS district. So it does give the authority to the board to review every single new applicant because it requires a change of tenant as per building code. It requires an intent, a letter of intent. It requires a site plan of operation, a building floor plan of operation, along with, a review to make sure it's updated and brought into current compliance standards through the building code. So every time it gets an alteration or change, It's our requirement to review it and then add any kind of responsibilities that the board would like to see a part of the permitted special permit that the board would grant. So that's my end of it. Brian Culpa, if you are on board, if you could clarify any greater for our zoning or the planning portions of it going forward, that'd be great.
So, you know, again, this is one of these scenarios where you're contemplating projects while we're undertaking a comprehensive plan, right? So when we talk about a comp plan, the comp plan forms a foundation for what you as a town want to see, where you want to see it, and ultimately forms a foundation for the zoning. The zoning is a legal response to the comprehensive plan that allows a community to sort of set standards on, you know, what kind of complementary uses are in an area. So I know there's been some question about spot zoning, and the way that I liken spot zoning is this, right? So if you ask the question about the property, you know, spot zoning specifically, you know, it's the process of singling out a small parcel for land use classification that is totally different from the surrounding area for the benefit of the owner of the property that would be a detriment to the others. And so I think you have to make a decision as a board, you know, does this project and this property transformation act in a way detrimental to the surrounding properties? I would guess that owners of the stores nearby would see an ancillary benefit to having something like this. Is it contiguous with other land uses? So, you know, when you look at Union Road, and one of the conversations we're having is, you know, what streets are going to be walkable, what are going to be drivable, you know, is there a mashup of two? Clearly, Union Road is designed around vehicular access. You have a number of drive-through facilities, whether it's banks or restaurants. And in fact, you have, I think, some 10 to 12 drive-through facilities, you know, right in proximity to this. So when we weigh those types of things for future rezoning, we have to look at, ultimately, we have to look at what are the existing land use functions and how do we want to transform the zoning? So what does the comprehensive plan want to say about rezoning? And when we take on a rezoning process after the comprehensive plan is adopted, you know, one of the things we'll look at is this an area that should be slated for higher density pedestrian activity? And Union Road doesn't jump out to us as an area that we would try to do that because of the nature of all the drive-through businesses, whether it's Sonic or Mighty Taco or Northwest Bank, or, you know, the Popeyes. There's just, it's a drive-through facility. So the question before you ultimately is, you know, are you interested in rezoning the site now? And if so, are there limitations you want to put on that zoning? So do you want to adopt a rezoning with some kind of contingency? And then is it going to be something that could be looked at as meldable into your future zoning? And from a consultant perspective, yeah, this can meld into the future zoning because the future zoning is probably going to be auto-oriented on Union. So now as a board, you've got to make a decision about, you know, is it complementary use or not complementary use to the buildings around it? Rick, I don't know if that answered the question exactly, but just trying to look ahead at the rezoning that would come as a part of a comprehensive plan and kind of guess at where things are going to lie.
No, thank you, Brian. And Brian Noack and I have had that conversation about what our intent from our comp plan is, and he's looked in some other documents we've had in the past and where he sees the Union Road going. So I think his lead in from my question and his question leads right into your explanation of that type of zoning. Thanks.
So Councilman Pilarski again. So just getting the resolution for the local law number 1 for the rezoning. I'm not seeing anything in there in regards to deed restrictions or the contingencies spoken of by Corey at the public hearing. So, I mean, John, did you have a chance to look this over better than me? Because I'm trying to read this over and listen to what's going on right now also.
Yeah, I can address that also.
Councilmember Pilarski, I did, and the condition that I see that's in the resolution, according to my notes, don't reflect, what was discussed at the public hearing. My recollection was that Corey was interested in possibly being amenable to putting a deed restriction on his particular property to the comfort of whatever board members were interested in that.
Yeah.
My reading of the language doesn't match that.
So this is the, if I may, just for a moment. So absolutely, my client remains amenable to deed restrictions. However, and this was the question that Councilmember Noack raised, and this was the issue that Rick Coburn was addressing. So as we got into the fine-grained details on that issue, what we recognized was that there's already a safeguard put in place in the town's zoning code that really makes a deed restriction unnecessary. And it's as though this town board, in its infinite wisdom, already realized that you do not want to give MS zoning and then have people change that MS zoning to something different without your approval. So what the town board did, and whatever town board adopted this at the time, there's an express provision in section 260-33 of the town of Cheektowaga zoning code, which is the code for the MS district. And it provides that if you change a use in the MS district, it requires a special use permit issued by the town board. So there are 9 permitted uses in section 260-33 for motor services. One of those uses is a motor vehicle washing establishment, which is what we're requesting. And in order for anyone to ever change from the motor vehicle washing establishment to any of the other permitted uses, they would have to come back to this board and get a special use permit issued in order to do that. So it was the same framework as the deed restriction would be. The deed restriction idea was, we want to give you comfort, town board, that if you give us MS zoning, we're not just going to change to something else that you might not want here. When we got into it, we recognized, well, that's not really necessary because the town board already has the authority over any change of use. Because if you don't think it's appropriate to be one of the other MS uses, you would have to issue a special use permit for that use.
So John, is the town protected on that? Do you believe?
I mean, I don't disagree with Corey. However, if you want to be completely comfortable at night knowing that you have something concrete, I think a deed restriction that's filed would be the way to go. And I think that's really what Corey, you had mentioned, back when we had the public hearing. I understand that, after relooking at it, you're comfortable with that, but I would leave it up to the board to make a determination if they feel more comfortable having something that's a little bit more definitive.
I mean, I myself.
Here, on the deed restriction, I remember we discussed it, and one of the questions that was raised was whether or not it was enforceable. And when in our discussion, we were saying that this is a little bit different than a residential deed restriction they're infamous at this point. So I mean, just wanted some clarification, if possible, on that question, that if we worked to get a deed restriction in addition to 260-33 of the zoning code, that it would be enforceable.
My opinion, it would be enforceable.
Yeah, and absolutely it would be. And to that end, just so that Councilmember Pilarski, just to be clear, I prepared a draft deed restriction and I submitted it to the town for review by the town attorney. We remain committed to that promise that we would accept the condition of the rezoning that requires us to adopt a deed restriction. If the board feels that that's appropriate.
So I myself would like it in black and white rather than leaving it up for interpretation.
Corey, just for a record, I never received any email from you regarding a deed restriction. And just so the record's crystal clear, I'm missing quite a few emails from the exchange between yourself and Anthony, Jesse, as well as Rick. Anthony obviously got me up to speed, but I'm missing quite a few of those emails and conversations. But I definitely didn't get anything from you regarding any deed restriction. We could talk offline about that, and you could re-forward that to me. I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it.
Thank you, Corey. Councilmember Nowak, does that clarify anything you were asking, or?
If your opinion is that the deed restriction on a commercial property would be enforceable by the town board, I think that's the question specifically we were dealing with 2 weeks ago, or the last time we spoke about this, rather. I'm satisfied with that answer.
Yeah, and I think Corey, he substantiated that as well as the applicant's attorney. So I think we're definitely in agreement with that.
And if for some reason we have an issue with the deed restriction down the road, or a prior town board does, we still have the zoning code itself, provided a future town board doesn't undo this section of the zoning code. So in that respect, I can understand what Councilmember Pilarski's saying, wanting the deed restriction, having an additional layer to be certain in the intent of this particular project and what the long-term goal is. And this is part of the comp plan too. I'm on the comp plan committee, and this is something that the comp plan group is sure to be aware of. I will take it back to them when we talk about the Union Road corridor a little bit more, and to make sure that this is in the long-term plan for that.
So am I under the understanding you're going to resubmit this resolution stating about the deed restriction?
Well, we would absolutely agree to a condition that the property be deed restricted and work out the language of that with the town attorney's office. So I think that your resolution adopting the local law would be subject to the condition that we file a deed restriction that is agreeable and acceptable to the town attorney's office.
I agree with that, Supervisor and Corey.
Okay. So I guess in other words, we really aren't ready to vote on this tonight, correct?
Well, I think you could, just subject to that condition, but I leave it to the board's prerogative.
If I'm not out of turn here, you could just simply amend the resolution to add that, right? So you could, as a board, you could tack on any number of conditions. The condition in that case, you would want to say that it's be subject to a deed restriction, that deed restriction be recorded, and you could probably leave it as a, deed restriction to be reviewed and approved by your attorney. I would guess, John, that would be the route you would want to see them go.
No, actually, I prefer to see it, get it from Corey, digest it, circulate it to the board, make sure they're comfortable with it, and then go forward with it. I mean, that's just me. That's my opinion. I mean, I agree with Corey. I'll leave it up to the board's prerogative.
I'd like a full package deal. I don't want to piecemeal together and then later on we're fighting over the, deed restrictions and the contingencies put forward if we approve everything tonight.
I would be open to proposing an amendment to the local law resolution to reflect the deed restriction language. If somebody would second that, and we can move to an up and down vote on the amendment.
I would second that, since Councilmember Nowak, you and I are both sponsors of the resolution. And we could add the amendment.
And at least have a vote on the amendment.
I don't know if Brian Culpa, can you get me the language before the start of the board meeting? Can you email that to me? Or I can give you the town clerk's
That should
email so you could get that to her.
Corey, you'd really provide the language.
I will. I'm happy to do it. I'll get it over to you.
What language are we referring to, if I could? What language?
An amendment on the local law on the suspension of rules that would reflect a condition of a deed restriction prior to passage and going into effect.
Okay, so you're just looking for language that's going to acknowledge there's gonna be a deed restriction subject to Corey and I discussing it and coming to an agreement.
Correct.
Yes.
Is that the way you understand it, Corey?
Yes, it is.
Okay, all right, I'm on the same page.
Yeah, so if we could get that language, I'll text you, Brian Culpa, I'll text you the town clerk's email and the town attorney's email, so we could get that possibly going tonight. And get that resolution amended.
I think, Corey, I think you ought to send it directly
I'm
to.
sorry,
No problem. Corey ought to send it directly to your clerk and to Rick Coburn. I don't think it should come through me. I'm just a consultant to the mix.
I'll send it to the clerk and to the town attorney and to Rick.
Is this something that can be sent to the town board as well for their review?
Yes.
all right. Problem is we got a pretty long work session, but Rick Coburn, can you work on that? Get that over to the town clerk?
Yeah.
once you
Yes,
talk
we'll
to
make
them?
sure that we get in there. Yes, thanks, Diane. We will.
Yeah, why don't you work on that? Because we have to run the meeting. It'd probably
Yep.
be easier, and I appreciate Brian Culpa's input on that, that it should be, working like
Reviewed.
that.
Yep, very good.
And then send it to the town board and the town attorney, so we have some revised language. And when we come to that, we'll have it ready, okay?
All right, Jesse, myself, Corey will go on to a conference call, merge together after this with Brian, and we'll all come up with the language and we'll forward it all on to everybody.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, the reason I stopped my video at times is because of the hesitation, because we had so many people on this meeting. So if ever that happens, try to mute yourself, and also might turn off your video if you're not talking. But I think with most of these people off, this might help a little bit, but I see a few of them still on here. So anyway, we'll move on to the next discussion item. Is Jill Murphy on tonight?
I am here.
Oh, good. Hi, Joe.
Hi.
We had wanted you to give us some information on, there was a resolution that was tabled at the last meeting about the entering into a new contract with GAR and where we are and why we're doing that. And if you can give us
Okay.
some background where we are.
Okay, so what happened was after I realized that we were leaving the contracts open, I went back and researched a little. I got a proposal from Eminger's people and from GAR's people. What it turns out to look like is the way that they've broken it down. I went with the original contract where we had two contractors. And then when they came back with the amended amounts, they both submitted to do either just residential, just commercial, or both. It looks like for us to go to one contractor, it would be cheaper based on the amended amounts. I did a spreadsheet of because I didn't get Joe's proposal till yesterday late, so I threw it on a spreadsheet just to kind of look at it both ways. But it looks like, it's going to be more beneficial for the town to go to one contractor, if you're looking at it from a financial standpoint. So I'm not sure exactly what direction, I know you had questions, and so I did get the information as far as having it split out. If we were to split it out, the total would be, the total remaining amount would be $593,000 to have two contractors for the 4-year contract. But to have it under one contractor, it looks like we're going to go probably about $396,000. So it's a pretty big difference. So
I know. Thank you for your work on this. And, and we had some discussions and I talked with some of the board members too, to try to make sure we're all totally on the same page and giving you the guidance you've been looking for from the town board on this. There are two questions that I had and they were brought up by other board members. The first has to do with reiteration of why there's a 4-year contract involved. And the second would be what we would do to finish out the current year and the current townwide assessment. If you can speak to both of those items.
Okay. The reason for the 4-year contract is because if we're going to go to 100%, we have to have a plan in place. We also have to do a memorandum with the state. If we do the memorandum with the state, and we can get state funding back. So we would have in place 4 years of just to maintain that 100%. So that was the reason for the 4 year, and the original contracts were for 4 years, I believe. They were for 4 years. And I'm sorry, what was your second question?
The second question would be, we had some discussions about how to carry out the current townwide reassessment to get us back to 100% where we are not at the moment because of being in the low 80s. So if you could speak to what our short-term plan could be. I know several council members had some conversations trying to calibrate and really get on the same page and moving as a whole board on what that looks like. And you recommended a course of action or suggested a course of action that just wanted you to speak to.
Okay, so with the litigation that went through, we have to get to 100% by next year. So, and speaking with both contractors, the biggest piece of that has already been done. In that first year, all the legwork has been done. We went out, we looked at every single parcel, we did inventory, that's all done. So now what we have to do is analyze the sales from the most current, the last 3 years of sales, because New York State says it has to be the 3 years previous to this. So we're going to look at the 3 previous years and we'll rerun those numbers and place values on the most current market for that will include 2020 in that. So it's pretty much rerunning the numbers. That's the bulk of this contract this year. Last year, it was getting everything updated and collecting all the inventory, making sure we had every shed and every, garage and square footage. We had all that inventory correct in the system, which we've now verified. So now we just have to, run the figures, run the numbers.
And I know for the members of the town board I spoke with, and I'm sure all of them to one degree or another have this concern, is the cost, wanting to do the most affordable fix. And with carrying out the current year, would the split contract arrangement we were working through in 2019 and we discussed back in 2019, and we had the resolution started in April of 19, and we began the project until September, where it was canceled and then reinstated. Would that split contract arrangement be the most cost-effective way in the short run, and then get us through that first get us to 100%?
Yes. In fact, the way the numbers came in between both contracts and how the amendments were put in this year would be cheaper to go with the 2 contractors, but to go forward, it would be substantially more expensive to keep 2 contractors. So if you're looking at a 4-year plan, it's better to go with 1. If you're just looking at next year, then it's better to go with 2. If you're looking at just dollars and cents.
And this is the final piece that I haven't had an opportunity to speak with my colleagues on this yet because of getting the proposal just yesterday and not reading it thoroughly enough to offer an educated opinion about which of the individual contractors we can go forward with, whether it's with residential, commercial, all with one or all with the other. Would you be comfortable, willing, able to offer some guidance or recommendation, thoughts on what we should do there? You kind of spoke to it a little bit already, but just to confirm that.
In working with both contractors, I did find that one contractor did have a little bit of a better plan for PR to get the public involved in a more positive way than they've been involved. And they also they were a little bit easier to work with as far as keeping on a schedule. We had regular meetings. We didn't have to follow through a lot. We didn't have to say, hey, did you do this? Hey, did you do that? Where, you know, it wasn't the same for both contractors. So other than that piece of it, that's the only thing that I can say from my office standpoint is as far as the for our office having a limited number of staff, it was very hard to have to follow up on so many things, you know, with the one contractor. So
Okay,
if you're
so-
asking my preference, we do have a preference, but we are, you know, we're willing to work with what the town board wants too.
Right, and
So-
with this, and I'll stop here and leave it open to my colleagues. We do have a resolution on the agenda for a contract with GAR. Now, the question to the rest of the board, and we haven't really hammered this down totally, is whether they want to move forward with it as is, or they want to amend that particular item, just to take a few minutes to discuss that and figure out exactly how we're going to act on resolution 2020-270, the tabled item.
Well, if I'm correct, we have contracts in place with both contractors right now. So to just leave them the way they are, like Jill said, it would save money for this year. And then we'd have to end contracts or cancel a contract with one of them to amend it later on. Am I correct on that, Jill?
Yes.
And where we are legislatively is we have a resolution from October of 2019 that brought the contract for one of the contractors to an end. And we have a resolution that will be coming from the table right now for this meeting that would put forward a contract for the 4-year plan that was discussed earlier in the conversation.
Well, can I just interject? There was one more resolution that we're missing. And that's, yes, we had the one in October stating that we would end the contract July 31st, 2020. However, we also had another one that superseded that one from March 24th, stating that the townwide reassessment update program for commercial and residential would be suspended until further notice. So that kind of superseded the one that said July 31st, 2020. So we're kind of in a suspension mode for both.
Can I ask a question? Why, I thought our whole intention here was to do a reassessment to get everybody back up to 100%. Now, we are going to do that. That will be done in 2021. Why do we have to keep a firm on the books for 4 years and pay all this money if we're at 100%? And we can just do a readjustment every year. Look at the comp, see what was sold in the last 3 years, which will be different years than doing it this year. So I just don't understand the concept of spending all that money when we're already at 100%.
We won't stay there if we don't have people running the sales for us. So in order to have the sales and all the information that we need to satisfy the state, that's what we're paying the contractor for, is they maintain the sales, they maintain the we don't have that many people in my office. What I'm trying to do is to pull more of that work back in the office and do the legwork, going out and doing the inventory stuff, so that's the savings. But in order to do that all in office, I'd need probably the state says about 14 more staff members. So
well, what would Jill, stop us from getting up to 100%, skipping a couple years and then doing it again in 3 or 4 years? Why do we have to keep every year?
Because the sales come in every year. Yeah, the sales come in every year.
Correct. I get that.
And so they measure us every year against the sales. New York State measures us yearly against the sales. So if I want to hold my equalization rate, I got to make sure that everybody's at what the market is. If I don't do anything next year and the market continues to go up, then so I say I look at this house and I say it's worth $100,000 based on what the sale is in that neighborhood this year. Now in the next year, all the houses in the same style house is selling for 120. I'm now I'm now I'm not at 100% market value.
What if it goes the opposite way?
I'm not at 100%. I need to go in and adjust down.
You have to
That's for
adjust.
both ways. Yeah. So that's another thing too, you know, when everybody's saying about recession, even though we may not be seeing that, if that were the case, if you're monitoring that, you can get out there and you can make those changes. It goes both ways. It's not just to raise people. Because we have done it both ways. I mean, you know, we definitely, as you've seen this year, there were people that were lowered. So.
No, it just seems like an awful lot of money to spend over the next couple years, considering everything. You know, just to have them run the comps every year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the only other answer to that and to keeping it current would be to hire more staff to do that. And I don't think that's the way to go either right now. You know, I think that's a bigger expense. In an office the size with this many parcels, I think I'd have to verify this, but the state says it's about 14 employees should be in an office my size. So I think we do very well with what we have. It just, you know, it's the law. The law says that this is what we're supposed to be doing. So that's all I'm trying to do, is to keep us within the law.
And earlier in the conversation, there was a brief note to the litigation the town was dealing with. The litigation, as I understand it, maybe I'm wrong, it kind of undid what was done on March 24th because of the impending resolution to that situation. Am I wrong in the understanding of that?
It's my belief that litigation, the court order supersedes everything.
Thank you.
Jill, Rick, that number you came up with, the cost, the reason one contractor, was that over 4 years?
Yes.
Okay, because I just did some math. I mean, if you had to put 14 people on at $30,000 a year, that costs us $420,000 a year. So you are right. It's a great savings using a contractor.
Yeah. And it's, you know, unfortunately, that's what the state mandates us to do these things, you know, and in a town this size, we're not doing anybody any favors by not getting out there, because with the commercial base and the residential base, if you don't keep that at an equal level, it's too hard on the residents too. I mean, it can go both ways. It's gets very skewed very fast because of the number of sales that come in, because of the number of different parcels, the commercial as opposed to residential. It gets skewed very fast in a town this size. That's why you have to keep up with it.
Hey, nice job.
Thank you.
Now, if I recall the discussions back in October, and someone please correct me if I'm wrong on this, when we were discussing the resolution or how to deal with the finishing a townwide reassessment for the year 2020 into 2021. The intent was to complete the 100% project at that time and then cease the contract. And that's why the language at that time was there as it is. So what this is doing is just a little bit different than that, but it also goes on what the town board acted on in 2014, committing the town to 100%. So in that piece of everything, I don't know how all these parts fit together, but in terms of going forward with this contract, I'm personally comfortable with that. Councilman Pilarski's a mover on the item as well. And I know everybody else has got thoughts, and I'd love to hear what everyone else has to say.
It's Supervisor Benchkowski here. I'll start my video. Well, we can't move forward with the new contract with GAR because you have a contract with Eminger. And my understanding was that when Brian Pilarski and Councilmember Adam Zach put that resolution in on October, was just to get us to 100% and stop.
Right.
So all we need is one more year to get you there. So, and then stop. So, but right now we have two contracts and it's cheaper just to do one more year with both contractors. Let them, and then we can give them 30-day notice at any time after the project's done. So it makes no sense to enter now into a new contract when you still have two separate contracts going.
and that's one of the things that we have to iron out is the
You have to-
resolution
you
in
have to-
October.
Eliminate those
Yeah,
two.
the resolution in October called for an authorization and a direction to sign the termination of that contract. And that's one of the things that can be acted on to deal with the residential side. The commercial side, again, the board talked about how to get through the first year. Those are the conversations I had over the phone with a lot of board members, including the supervisor, and what everyone was thinking. But going beyond that, I don't know what the rest of the board's feelings are, but I understand what the supervisor's saying.
Again, last year when myself and Councilmember Pilarski sat with Jill and I realized that, you know what, we made a mistake and that we would bring it back. I was under the impression, and I believe now Councilman Pilarski, if I am misspeaking for you, please say so. But I was under the belief that we were bringing it back to do the 100% for this upcoming year that we are in right now. I did not intend to go and do a 4-year term. I just put it back on the resolution to do the 100% this year.
I guess I'm wondering, I do have a question here. If we do it for the 1 year, then what is our goal after that?
That is something that I would discuss with the town board when it happens.
Well, it is
Well,
happening though.
Jill,
It's here every year.
Well, I would,
And I have to speak up on this, going back to when we went to the 100%. It was never set up for just 1 year. Back then, I think our equalization rate was down as low as 62%. We went to the 100% to make it easier for everybody and put the fairness back into it. There was no timeline on it where let's do it this year, next year. We'll skip a couple of years, maybe not do it for 4 or 5 years after. As soon as we stop keeping up with the records, the state is going to change our equalization rate. And in most cases, I think I've explained it to enough people that as the equalization rate goes down, in a lot of cases, your taxes are going to go up because the tax rate changes. And it's absolutely foolishness to think that, well, let's just do it for 1 year. Why did we just get through a lawsuit? Because it gets to the point, you let it go too long, it becomes totally unfair. The tax burden is put on some people and not on others. It has to be consistent, staying at 100%. It's the only fair way to do it.
So I guess going back to what everyone's been saying, I mean, the supervisor is correct. Having 2 separate contracts is a lower rate, as Jill has also mentioned. And to me, that makes the most sense, and we're currently in contract with both Eminger and GAR right now to do 2 separate. So I'm in favor of that. It's saving taxpayers dollars. We're not paying 200,000 more for the same or similar service, as close as possible to being the same. Maybe there's some confusion on the maintenance piece versus the 100% every year. Can you clear up, Jill? Is the maintenance, and I want to even call it spot reassessment because that's illegal. You can't do that from my understanding.
No.
But what does the maintenance entail of it to keep it at 100%?
Oh, I'm sorry, really quick. I want to clarify between my understanding of spot versus neighborhood reassessment. Spot reassessment is like individual houses or just a few houses. And neighborhood reassessments are taking whole neighborhoods at a time. Neighborhood reassessment is my understanding is totally allowed. Like the councilman said, spot reassessment is a no-no, and that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah,
Correct.
that the term they use is selective reassessment, and that would be as if a house sold in a neighborhood for, say, $100,000 more than, or whatever, more than the rest of the houses, and I went in and changed the assessment on just that one. That's a selective assessment, and that's illegal. I would have to wait until that whole neighborhood was reviewed before I could go out and look, because obviously one sale doesn't make a market. So we're going to look at that market, and if there's enough houses that are over or under, we're gonna make the adjustments according to that. And that's what it's not really spot assessment. It's analyzing every neighborhood to see what the sales are doing so that we can keep an accurate gauge on what needs to be increased, what needs to be decreased. And then there's also the sticker shock involved. If you don't do that for 3 years, look at what just happened. The sales have gone through the roof and people can't believe their houses are worth that much. Yet they turn around and they can sell them for more than what we have them for on our rolls. So it's, there's no easy way to do this. It's sticker shock. The longer you wait, the worse it gets on the resident because of that. So it's done numerous ways. People do it cyclical, where they do every 3 years. People do it, but they commit to something. In the towns that they don't have a lot of commercial real estate. They're not set up the same. In a town this size, look at, Amherst is in Lancaster. West Seneca's talking about doing a reval. Lancaster just did one, because you're not being fair if you're not looking at your towns on a regular basis.
The way I see it, we have essentially two paths forward as a board in the guidance we have to give our assessor. The first would be could do the annual maintenance to maintain the 100% that the 2014 resolution has, and then a few years down the line, whether it's 2023, 2024, do another town-wide reassessment after looking at some of the active neighborhoods and do the town-wide again, or to deal with the 2014 resolution and end our commitment to 100% and not do the neighborhood maintenance every year and not commit to a town-wide in any particular year. That's the way I see it personally. We essentially have those two basic paths forward, and that's what we have to deal with here today.
Supervisor Benchkowski here. I truthfully feel that all or nothing, as far as, you want to go with this 100%. But then when you maintain it, like you said, the neighborhood sections bother me, because that's not very fair, because somebody's neighborhood gets reassessed the next year how do you pick those, Jill?
Based on the actual data. We've run ratio studies. How much did all the ranches in this neighborhood go for? How much do we have all our ranches assessed at? If all the ranches in the neighborhood are going for $50,000 and we have them assessed at $70,000, we need to go back in and lower those to $50,000 on average. So it's done like that.
Right. So that's how you pick a neighborhood.
Within 5%.
That's how you pick a neighborhood.
Yeah, if any neighborhood, we look at every single neighborhood. If any neighborhood is above or below by 5%, that's the ratio, then we have to go in and do something. So if there's a 10% or 7% increase in sales, we'd have to go in and look at those neighborhoods. And then the adjustments are
a neighborhood had 2 years in a row. What if 2 years in a row there was a neighborhood that had 7% and there are some that didn't at all?
Well,
then you're kind of spot checking.
Well, no, if that's what the sales are, then that's what they are. We don't dictate the market. It's whatever the market is doing. It's driven by the market.
But why, I thought
understand.
I'm sorry.
I don't know.
Go
I
ahead,
don't know how else to explain it.
Councilmember Hammer.
No, I just don't understand the concept of going to 100% townwide. And then we're going to start picking neighborhoods here and there. And we're going back right to where we were before. We're going right back to the same boat we were in.
Thank you.
When we stayed at 100% from 14 to 18, that's how they did it. We stayed at 100%. It's when we stopped doing that, when we pulled back, the equalization rate dropped. It's when we stopped monitoring those neighborhoods. That's when it happened.
But like Diane said, if you have a neighborhood, no matter where it is in Cheektowaga, that had a lot of sales, they may be reassessed 2-3 years in a row.
Not if they had a lot of sales. If they had a lot of sales that were outliers, like 5 or 10% above or below, that's the only way we're going to go in and look at those.
Right. And that
there's a lot. Could it happen? Yes. But overall, the average is that it's not. In this market's a little bit different, but if you went and looked at the studies, you're not going to see people go up unless you're in a red hot neighborhood, like South Cheektowaga with all those new builds. There was a lot of activity in there. And so when you see a lot of activity, that's what, the market is what the market is. We don't dictate that. So, but they've leveled off. South Cheektowaga, there were houses that were reduced this time. So you can see that, when it was new and that they were selling for more, you saw more activity in that neighborhood, but you're not seeing that now. So.
Right. But I think people, young families and stuff like that, are trying to get into a home just so they can have a home and not have to pay rent. And they're looking for something that's affordable. And those are the neighborhoods that generally the people aren't overly wealthy. And they're the ones that are gonna end up having all the sales, and then the people in those areas, their taxes are gonna go up.
Well, again, I don't know that they're gonna go up that much. You have to actually look at it to see. We can sit here and guess all day long, but I've seen this long enough to know that, yeah, some people's taxes do go up. It is the nature of that. I mean, that's the nature of New York State, to be honest with you. I'm not, I can tell you that I've done it both ways, and I think you're doing a better service to your residents by maintaining 100% for as far as being fair and equitable. And that's kind of that's my job, is to be fair and equitable. So if you're asking my opinion, of course, that's what I support.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, because I mean, out of my personal experience, there were times in the 40 some years I owned this house that we were assessed 2, maybe 3 years in a row. And we went up every time. We never went down.
Could you sell your house for what you were assessed at?
No, this was a while ago. I would say probably no, because my house is close to Walden Avenue. It's also close to the train tracks. And don't tell me they were there when you bought your house, because 40 some years ago, we were lucky if we saw one train go by on a weekend. Now it's just nonstop. I mean, you can't predict those things.
We do. We calculate those in because people are still buying in that neighborhood. They're still buying houses near those same railroad tracks. They're still buying in that neighborhood, so the sales are still there.
I'm saying if you go back a block or two, they're not dealing with the same thing that people are dealing up close.
Right, and they should influence that. When you look on our file, there's an influence factor for if you're on a main road, there's an influence factor that would adjust when they run that out, it adjusts it down in the computer saying, well, they're near Walden Avenue. So that sitting right on Walden Avenue, we see that the sales on Walden Avenue are typically lower. So they make an adjustment for that. It's called an influence code.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Linda, Rick.
Yeah.
Okay, you look at a young couple in the neighborhood you're talking about, and say their assessment went from 50 to 75,000. Now, that young couple's value of their home just went up. That makes it easier for them to get a loan, to do other things, to make improvements on their home at cheaper rates through the banks. So it's a win-win for both. Plus, the STAR program, is based on, instead of 85%, it's based on 100%. So now their STAR program brings and lowers their taxes even more. So it's actually a good thing to stay at that 100%. It gives them more than an advantage to do better for themselves. And that's the new generation is always looking for that. They're smart kids.
Yeah.
Rick, can I just chime in that a bank will not take a tax assessed value or full market value. They do their own appraisal. So that wouldn't help them if they were going for a home equity loan.
They still look at that.
No, they don't. They do their own assessment. No, I'm sorry, but they don't. Even a realtor won't look at that.
In a bank appraisal, they do list what the neighborhood sales are. I've seen the bank appraisals come in and they'll list what that market is around that house for valuation.
But still, they can come into your house and do their own evaluation, because your
Correct.
house would be totally different than the one that's sold down the street.
Right. They take the sales, but they're not going to look at your tax assessment. That's the part they're not going to look at. They're just going to look at what they're going to look at, and that's the current sales. That's just how appraisals work. It has nothing to do with the tax assessment.
In terms of how we act on this item, is this an item that we need to pull for the moment and take up in 2 weeks? Is this something that the board feels we can vote through tonight? Is it something that should be amended?
I would like to pull it.
Question for John, if he's sitting there. My understanding, we're under a court order with this. Is that correct?
Sorry,
John?
Jerry, having technical difficulties.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's like I said, my assumption, with the deal we made to settle the lawsuit. Is there a time factor involved in the judge's order to settle it, the assessment case?
Well, I mean, we have an agreement, and part of that agreement is you know what it is, and that's to take place, at a certain time, I believe next year, if that's my understanding. Jill, you could correct me on that.
Yes, so anyway, we are in place right now. We have a company to do that under the stipulation. So we don't need to take action
Tonight.
on a new company. We have the contract in place. There's no reason to take action. That one should just be gone and pulled and continue for another year with the two current companies that Jill stated that's the most cost-effective way. So I don't see what else is going to change in 2 weeks. I think we just need to pull that resolution because you still have two contracts. We really shouldn't, or have to vote no on that resolution because you still have two contracts in place.
Yeah,
I
the
would
contract
agree with
has
you.
both commercial and residential, so it would have to be pulled in order to reflect two separate companies, which we have in place right now.
Correct. I agree with you, Councilmember Pilarski, that there really is no reason to entertain another. Have two to take care of what we have to take care of based on the stipulation order.
And then
It's
I just
done
have a
with.
question. I have a question regarding, there's an amended pay scale on the contract for Eminger. Does that have to be amended through the board or no?
No, because we're not going to take his new offer. We still have a contract with him that we never terminated. So we're going with the contract that he had given us.
Right, we do have a resolution from October, and I think that the litigation superseded all of this, like Jill said, in addition to what we did March 24th, just to make sure that we needed to terminate the agreement July 31st. The board's all of the agreement that the litigation superseded that resolution, correct? That's no longer, that deadline.
I'm not so sure. No,
Well,
I'm not
the other
so
thing
sure.
is though, the other thing is we're asking if we're moving on and we're asking Joe to rerun figures that he didn't plan on rerunning, that amended cost will be included. It won't be just business as usual because we need him to rerun totals, which I don't think he was planning on doing for the whole town because we stalled the contract.
Right.
There's really a new contract with Eminger effective August 1st because the other one expired July 31st.
And that's basically the question I'm getting to is in terms of contracts, how do we go forward from the 1st of August till now, working through that? Do we just extend the existing contracts? That seems to be the spirit of the board in the conversations I had to get through this year. What to do beyond that, we haven't reached consensus on yet. So is there anything we have to do as a board in terms of resolutions to make sure we extend the existing contracts tonight to make sure that things are flowing just as they need to for the assessor to follow the will of the town board? Is there anything you need from us, Jill, in terms of resolutions? Supposing this was polled this evening, is there anything else you need from us to make sure every T is crossed, every I is dotted? And John, if you could speak to that, that would help as well.
Yeah, that's the one. The only concern I have is if you're doing it that way, that there was an amended contract submitted by Eminger.
Okay. Whew. So, I mean, I shared my thoughts before of what I thought we should do, and I know the supervisor and Councilmember Hammer are of a different opinion. What do the other board members think?
Well, I
That's
think
for the-
everybody knows
yeah.
my feeling on it. I don't think it's a good idea to put it off, or we're gonna wind up in the same situation again. Some people are gonna be paying more of their fair share of taxes. I would probably assume if we let it go for 2 or 3, 4 years like we have in the past, the equalization rate is gonna drop. Somebody, God only knows who, might be the same one, we'll be looking at another lawsuit. And realistically, it's the only fair way to do it, take care of the taxpayers.
I agree.
Yeah, I think we pull tonight's with GAR and then extend the contract with Eminger effective August 1st with the revision.
Well,
And
I
so-
think we need a new resolution for that. It's not on the
Correct.
meeting tonight. And Eminger wasn't charging us. So I think Jill would have to just prepare a new resolution and we could leave the loan, and continue on. And then we look at it for next year, but at
Yep.
least be in compliance with the stipulation order. But I think that just by accepting the stipulation order doesn't mean that it superseded any of our resolutions, because that didn't designate how we're going to move forward. It just said that we had to do 100%. It didn't, it's not like saying, well, those other resolutions did that. That's my opinion anyway. That would be up to the board how to do that, not the stipulation agreement.
So I'm hearing from 3 board members to pull it this evening. I don't want to misrepresent anybody else's perspective, but earlier we talked about what the intent was back in October. I think Councilmember Adamczyk was talking about her recollection of what that was like. And I remember it much the same way, like she said, that to finish this year and then get us to 100%, and then everything forward was a different conversation. I don't know what Rick's thoughts are and Councilmember Adamczyk on polling this. I know, listening to Mr. Kaminsky, he wants us to continue forward with 100%, and polling this wouldn't help us get to that goal. So, I don't know what Rick and Chris think of this.
I'm all for the 100%. I'd like to keep going. I don't want to go backwards.
But aren't we getting to the 100% with Eminger doing the residential and
Yeah,
GAR?
we are. Yeah.
We're all
yeah.
arguing the same thing here. It's just what we're doing after year 1, which is either
Exactly.
or GAR is either, we approve the GAR contract tonight. That would mean GAR is doing both residential and commercial, which is going to cost us more. We all are in agreement that we have to and are going to do 100%, which is whichever approach we use, whether it's one person, GAR tonight's resolution, or it's Eminger and GAR, which is cheaper for the first year. After that, we reevaluate it, or next resolution, battle it out. But tonight, we just got to choose whether or not we're going forward with GAR or not.
I think, I'm sorry to jump in again. I think polling this for the moment would be best to regroup and to work on this and more phone calls, more emails to make sure we're all on the same page for the next round, because we have another work session item. I'm comfortable with polling it so we can iron out the details. Councilmember Pilarski is, we're the mover and the seconder.
I'm with that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. Yeah. So I think the last portion of the, well, actually, we might have a little more than that, but is the town hall, unlocking of the town hall. I know that I'm trying to find my file here. I was going to talk briefly. I sent the town board an email. Karen Marchese asked our risk management company, Lolly, to come in, and I sent everybody the analysis of what they wanted us to do in order to unlock the back doors. So I think we have everything in place. As I said, there's a lot of information about the elevator only going to the first floor because of the town clerk's office being on the first floor. The ground floor bathrooms will be used for the public, and only the other bathrooms throughout town hall will be used for the employees. Those are all taken care of. I think there's some gates that are being blocked off on the first floor to keep the personnel department separate from the town clerk, so nobody's straying. And I think there's some signage needs to be put in place, but there's been a holdup with somebody being sick, and that normally does the signage. So John Jay is working on that. And the biggest part would be having the back door manned. So we need to for having people to sign in and sign out when they come into town hall, and direct them where they're going. And at some point during tax season, they would monitor the amount of people that are in town hall and possibly put them in a holding center, like in the ground floor seats 6 feet apart. And once that is full, they'd have to take their phone number and send them back out to their car to wait, because we could only have a certain amount. So we have to have somebody monitoring how many people are going up to the town clerk's office so that we don't violate the social distancing. So in order to do that, we had actually Karen Marchese had gotten 2 proposals, one from, started working with Amherst Security and another company, and then she had left on vacation, and the town clerk has continued to have to run up and down the stairs for letting people in. So we had to get working on getting a company to be able to monitor that situation. So we were able to get a very competitive quote from Amherst Security. Because we are in a state of emergency, we are able to put that under emergency orders as far as not having to do a formal RFP. So I had submitted tonight to get Amherst Security up and running tomorrow, since, isn't it hunting season, hunting license season for the town clerk. So I had put that resolution in. Thank you to Anthony in the law office and John Dujak also for putting that wonderful resolution together that really explains that we're in a state of emergency, and that's the only reason for this company. And the minute we are done with the state of emergency, we will be able to give them 30 days notice that we don't need their services anymore. So with that, there's a resolution on the work session. Are there any questions?
What's the union have to say about it?
The
They
union doesn't
appreciate
run
the
the town,
protection to their,
Jerry.
I'm sorry, the union
I-
appreciates the protection provided to employees.
Yeah, I mean, Jerry,
Karen
we're running
Marchese, I
we're running
apologize.
Well,
the
I'm-
union
I'm
does
going by
not
the-
run the town, okay?
I did not think it did.
We don't have
did
to
not
check with the
did,
union,
Diane.
okay? We're in a,
We have a
so why are
union
you
contract.
asking what
not-
the union's thinking?
Just
There's
reading
no
the union
position in
contract.
there. What union contract?
Well, we've got the TCA, we've got a PBA, the police department, and basically, as far as I'm concerned, and I don't know what the rest of the board's feelings are, that is police work. Security is police work. We are going to pay somebody, if it goes a year,
I
it's
didn't say
$1,000 a week.
security. No, it's not. We don't need a police officer taking people's names and logging them in and seeing if they wear a mask and getting them off the street. We don't want that. We need our police officers on the street, keeping our residents safe. We don't need them sitting in the back hall of town hall to look at people's licenses. Okay, Mr. Jones, I hear
Diane,
you
you're
signed
going
it at
way,
5:15.
way over
That is
the
not
line, and you will
police
not let
work.
anybody else speak. Of course, nobody else has the voice in anything anymore. And all I'm saying, it's in the union contract. We are probably going to wind up with a grievance in it. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I am not the only one that looked into it. Even with the court officers, we can't use them because they're in the TCEA. We have the police department right next door. So we are going to be paying somebody as basically an usher, $25 an hour to tell people where to go. If there's any issues, any problems, those security guys cannot lay a hand on a person. They cannot detain them. They cannot arrest them. They're going to have to call the police department anyway. Most of those people that work for security outfits, and I don't know this, they are not even considered peace officers. That's why most of them are they're unarmed. How long have we been do this? You know, and we're in phase 4 now, which allows enough people that, God, it almost sounds like somebody's going to overrun and totally destroy the town hall. You know, people are not that foolish, but I'm just looking at it for the sake of the town. We'll probably have another bunch of grievances over this. So I am assuming nobody has even looked at the union contract.
I know the union contract in and out. I'm the one that sent you those. Court officer job description does not fill what we need. And neither does the detention officer. And a police officer, of course, we don't need a police officer there taking names, logging people in and out. A police officer protects. They are an armed officer. This is not police work. And I don't think it's fair to take them off the streets, since we are also down police officers, and put them in the back hall of town hall. And if we didn't want to take them off the streets, we'd have to bring them they're in on their day off and pay them time and a half, $60 an hour versus $25 an hour.
Just
Plus
on
the
on the question
additional
of
to retirement.
On the question of contract language, Rick Rosiniak and I spoke about this today. He brought the issue of contract language to my attention, and in the PBA contract, section 201 D, it speaks to what's called entering into private contracts with what are called quote unquote police connected services. Now, I think the idea of a security guard for the town hall to ensure social distancing is a good idea. It would help us open back up, process hunting license, get ready for tax season, all of those things. I'm on board with it. But in terms of the question of the contract language that Councilman Kaminsky was talking about, I think that's what he's pointing to. Am I correct in that?
Yes,
In 201 that you were talking about?
correct.
Okay.
All right, well, let me just read it to,
Okay.
Councilmember, are you done, Councilmember Nowak? I wanted to read the actual paragraph. That you're,
I'm all set, yes.
okay, that you're referring to. It says the town agrees to employ only civil service police officers to do police work in any capacity except routine clerical work, now being performed by clerks in the town. The town agrees that it will not enter into any private contractors that eliminate police-connected services or work now being performed by members of the police department, except as herein set forth. So we're not taking away this work was never done by a police officer, and it is not police officer work. In fact, I'm going to ask Karen Marchese if you can find the job description of a police officer and send that to the whole board, because this is not police officer work. We're not taking any work away from them.
I would agree with you, Supervisor, that this is a new job and it hasn't been done before. It's, I just want to make sure that, because this is the section that's been brought up, that we have a chance to discuss it and we're all on the same page. So I'm glad you read it in full, because that makes sure the town board is all on the same page as what to
Correct.
do with that, And it's just the term police connected services. I don't know how strictly or how broadly that would be interpreted by lawyers, the PBA, the town board, all the different stakeholders. We've never had to encounter this in my time on the board. That's why I pointed it out, and I'm glad you read the whole paragraph.
Thank you.
Okay, can I speak, Rick?
Sure, yes.
Okay, I mean, for years, we've had the police at the town hall during tax season. The biggest thing right now for Kim is the tax situation, is that's the people that are coming in to pay the money. They're walking in with cash. We want to protect them. That's why we keep them there. So now we're going to add somebody to the job. He can already handle that job. He's already there. It's not just for, and we're looking at, okay, hunting licenses. How many hunting licenses, Kim, do we sell a year? How many people is that? It's not many. I know we sell hunting license, fishing licenses, but we're not going to get overrun with hunters. It's mostly the tax deal, and we already have a policeman there to protect us on that. So I would say continue using him. He's already there.
Can I just answer that? He's not there 24/7 and every day. He's only there twice a year during tax season. Is that 3 or 4 weeks, Madam Clerk? How many weeks is tax season that you have the police officer there? Maybe she's not here.
So we ask,
So anyway,
so
it's
we
only,
asked-
it's not more than 4 weeks. It could even be 2. Okay, there, oh, good.
we ask the police to be there during our heavy collection season, which is usually about 2.5 weeks, depending on when the final day to collect is. We ask them to be there while we're collecting, so that's 9 to 4:30. Currently, we are getting hunting licenses, and I will say that we have gotten about 45 throughout the day, 45 people throughout the day, including our other transactions that we're doing. And people have been very responsible to walk in and follow the signs that the facilities department has put in. They have lines, 6-foot lines marked, and they have emblems there for people to stand on. So they've been very respectful of other people coming in and out of the building so far.
So when does the hunting season end? At September 30th is the date for the beginning of the season, or September 1st? September.
In October, end of September, because then in October, they will have a second offering of DMP permits, which usually is not as strong a reaction as the initial
Yeah, so it gets
purchases.
off. Yeah. But it's not like we're gonna have it for a long time here. I think we're, like, it's gonna slow down. And
Can I
that we
say
are-
something?
The tax collection, the bills will go out in September, but we're gonna ask for the police officer usually for October to October 15th, which is the due date. So it'll be like 2.5 weeks.
Kim, the police officer that is there is basically right in the tax office watching the people that are coming in to pay their bills. He's not standing at the door signing people in or directing them where to go or making sure they have a mask or standing 6 feet apart. I think that's more of a COVID-related expense. And I don't think we need to use a police officer for that.
Well, that's not for me to determine, but I will say.
No,
yes,
I know,
the
but I
police
mean-
Officer usually stands inside our office, yes, and monitors the people coming in and making sure that they go where they're directed.
Right, and we also need, like, a guard at the door to have people sign in too, because if there ever is a problem with COVID, we have that record for contact tracing. And that's not a police job.
I think Councilmember Hammer's take on this is, describing the job. The question has to be asked, is it a police connected service? And I think about those things, taking names, making sure people have their masks on, ensuring social distancing. That's not traditionally one of the things the police department was doing in the town hall. But they are already there. They were there making a presence for the council meetings when we were meeting in person. And as we talked before, they were in the tax office for tax season. So the police, the PBA members have had a presence in the town hall for some police services in the past. I don't know how to interpret this clause, whether it's in the most strict way to say it's literally just those things, or if we should look at this in a different way, that having a security guard that looks a lot like a police officer, that's interpreted by the public as like a law and order figure. If you think of it broadly, whether it's a police connected service, and that's why I think we have to really work through this particular phraseology and really what it means. And if we go ahead with this, the concerns that Rosiniak and Kaminsky have about potential grievances, I honestly don't know what to make of that and how we as a board deal with that. But Councilmember Hammer, your description of what the job is, it doesn't sound like what a police officer does. It sounds like something different. I agree with you.
Councilman Pilarski here. So what the clerk just told us is so far 45 people have been coming in per day for hunting licenses and respecting the rules and regulations of set forth by COVID. Socially distancing, wearing a mask, going where they're supposed to. Is this something we have to jump on right now, or can we open up town hall, see how it is for a week, and then say, hey, effective next week, somebody starts? Or are we just gonna spend 50 grand on this? And my question is it reimbursable? This is a Brian Kraus question. Through COVID, is this an expense that we get 75% for through FEMA, or is it, how do we get any reimbursement on it? And then I've also got a question on the bidding process. Was the procurement policy followed, or does it not have to be followed because we're under a state of emergency?
Brian Kraus, are you there that you can answer? What was your
Yeah,
question?
I mean,
Okay,
I can't give you a definitive answer on whether that will be 75% reimbursed by the federal government or not. I mean, certainly we can make that argument that it is related to the situation that, the pandemic, that we wouldn't have this situation otherwise. So I would say that it's something that I'm going to submit, but I can't guarantee we'll get reimbursed for it.
And then do we have to follow the procurement policy, or did we bid it out, or was it just Amherst Security and we said, hey, we need this service?
Karen Marchese started it. She got two.
I got referrals from our safety consultant, and I contacted both to get quotes on it. And then, as Diane said, I was not available for a couple weeks, and Dan Jones finished up the job very well. And he got quotes on pricing and so forth and shared with Diane. And I believe, as Diane spoke earlier, because of the emergency nature of this and COVID related, getting quotes was sufficient.
Who else did we get quotes from, Karen?
Jim Spelling or something. Let me look, Jerry. I can't quite remember the name. I can forward that to you if you'd like.
Yeah, please.
I will. And, again, this was done in the spirit of keeping town hall safe, ensuring that, as Linda Hammer said, that we had contact tracing info should something happen related to COVID. And, we would be able to turn that information over to the Erie County Department of Health. I know that, Kim has a great deal of traffic, and I think, this is intended to help her monitor or control that traffic as well. The facilities department has done a great job putting the markings on the floor. I don't know if any of you have been in town hall to see the markings on the floor. They've done a great job. As Diane said, sometimes when we get traffic from the town clerk's office, they tend to meander. So we do have somewhat of a block down to my end of the hall, so they know that they stay in the town clerk's area. But this is intended fully to ensure the safety of the people in town hall and not to steal work away from anybody else, certainly not. And it's not necessarily police work. I don't know if any of you have been to the doctor during this time period, but they tend to have you come in, they ask you a series of questions. Have you traveled to any of the, how many ever 49 states that are on the list this week or something like that? Have you had any of the following symptoms? Is your name and phone number the same as we have it? Because I'm going to a doctor, they have that information. We would ask them to provide us with their contact information just in case they do come down with COVID, and then we need to provide that information to the Erie County Department of Health. That's the full intent of this. We thought having a security firm versus another type of employee would, tend to help people understand that this is serious so that they're on their best behavior. And that was the spirit of moving in this direction. And Jerry, I will get that other quote to you. I'll have to look through my emails, and I appreciate some patience. I'll send it to everybody.
But do we plan on?
I just wanted to jump in. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Do we plan on doing this?
Council member, I did repeat yourself.
Do we plan on doing this for other buildings as well, like Alexander when we open that up, or senior center or youth and rec and all that, to hire somebody to work the door and monitor that?
Well, it wouldn't hurt. That's why I said I'm still waiting for the finalization of Alexander, but I think they kind of like the idea of having this company sit there and monitor. There's employees that are afraid, and they're at high risk. We have many, many employees, and I really feel that we need to monitor. This is not for security purposes. It's just to monitor, to make sure that people are following the rules. Right. And only during COVID. I mean, the minute we don't have to do the social distancing, we give this company 30 days notice. So, I mean, at any point, we can just terminate the contract. However, I feel this is probably going to go longer than 3 months, but we don't know. The other thing I did want to answer Councilmember Pilarski is the way the resolution is written. If you look at the very last whereas that Anthony put together, it mentions about our resolution from May 7th, 2010 about the procurement policy. And it states specifically in there, except when directed by the town board, no solicitation of written proposals or quotations shall be required under the following circumstances. And C mentions emergencies. So he has that in the resolution. And that's why we did get another one, but we ran out of time. So we felt it was very prudent to move forward with this so we can get this company in tomorrow, because I know the town clerk saw certain things going on, but there were other things that we found on camera where there were clustering and people gathering together very closely while they're waiting in line. Elevator wise too. You don't want more than one person in that small elevator. There's no way they can space 6 feet apart. So that's what we need this company for. I don't feel comfortable keeping those doors unlocked any longer. It was 2 days and I thought, well, let's see how it goes. And it went pretty well, but it wasn't 100%. And also, I feel that during tax season, of course, we should keep the police coming in and let them do their job that they normally do. And the security company will be out right at the doorway asking for the people's information and not letting them go into the tax office when there's already 3 people there. That's where we'll need them the most, and still have the police officer watching, the actual transactions and money, and so nothing is stolen. So we're not saying the police aren't going to be there for tax season. Any other questions about this? Okay. What we'll do is after the regular board meeting, we have a very quick executive session because we only have 10 minutes to the regular meeting. So I'll make a motion after the regular meeting to go into executive session. So everybody's aware of that. Any other questions? Okay, I'll make an motion to adjourn the work session, and then we'll reconvene at 7, got 10 minutes, and we'll come back and do the regular meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Okay.